Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Sonic the Hedgehog here, and I'm back for some more yet again for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Wario World for the Nintendo GameCube. So, last time we have managed to able to completely done with every single parts, or the remaining parts I should say, in World 1 in Excitement Central, while simply able to go through Greenhorn Ruins. In addition to those kinds of stuff, we also managed to deal with not one, but two bosses at the same time, which one emphasis usually takes place in a sinking sand hole, and as well as the forms of, well, Dynamite. So even then, today for this episode, and that was the fact that we're about to be, getting things started with the second world in this game, which, we're not exactly sure what this world is going to call it, but even then, we'll find things out whenever we jump right in with the first level in that particular world. So even then, we'll just do the usual collectathon stuff, like for instance the treasures, golden pieces of the statue, in addition to the forms of those red diamonds as well. So, Spooktastic World is the name of the world, and the first level in that particular world is Horror Manor, which even then is usually takes place in a spooky place level right there. Despite the fact that the Halloween is already over, ever since Journey forms of specifically when Deathly has already finished up with with Pac-Man World and stuff like that, which, even though he was gonna able to do that in the forms of, specifically, later on, or early points of October, but he managed to able to finish, Pac-Man World around the same time as when Halloween is about to start. So, but even then, that's the, end of topic right there. So, basically, we actually come across these enemies right here, which, we can't usually attack them with your fists. The only time you can only attack them is that whenever their little skeleton hand managed to able to actually just slam it down on the floor, and basically his weak spot shows up, and it's your chance to able to ground pound them. So, the thing you have to do is like 3 hits or something like that, which, is pretty possible kind of thing about it. So even then, that's as far as I can usually say about it here. So obviously today's day is the forms of the 6th of November today in 2019. Some exciting news has been happening is that, yes, that originally that me and Sylvester has already mentioned about this ever since in, let's just say, in Mario Kart 8 / Mario Kart 8 Deluxe video. And that was the fact that we were a little bit worried at first if Terry Belbgard is actually going to get a massive delay or anything like that as the DLC character from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Well, today, he was officially released ever since during the forms of today. Specifically, in the forms of the actual presentation for this point. Because, well, Master Sakurai has managed to able to demonstrate how, Terry works. And, it's pretty exciting though. But even then, we'll give our first thoughts about, Terry as a character whenever me and Sylvester will get back into Mario Kart 8 / Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Let's Play. So, and as far as the actual other news worth mentioning though, well, they obviously has already mentioned about a lot of stuff on Pokemon Sword and Shield recently, and that was due to the fact that they actually have ourselves the actual reveal of the map right now, which is obviously based off from United Kingdom, which even then that's actually a pretty slow, I should say. But then again, I'm not exactly gonna pick it up or anything because, well, you know how I feel like when it comes to like playing these games like so. But anywho though, speaking of which, actually, is the fact that one thing that I think Piglet has already mentioned about this, or he has not mentioned about this ever since during the likes of his yesterday's redo Let's Play of Toy Story 2, and that was the fact that, well, recently that Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 for the Nintendo Switch has recently released yesterday in North America, whilst we have to wait until 2 days left in the forms of the UK version's release. So, and as far as the actual reviews of that particular game so far, whenever they did manage to post it up or anything, well, turns out we actually got a mixed reception apparently, which even then, although the actual score in Metacritic is actually slightly higher in comparison to the forms of Rio 2016, or even especially noticeable in Sochi 2014, that's for sure, because you know how Sochi 2014 was actually the actual the beginning of the Mario and Sonic's Olympic Games decline, which basically just gets a little bit more lackluster kind of thing about it. Although I certainly think that the game itself was actually my least favorite games in the series, but it's nothing that terrible or anything. It's just, well, okay as it is for Sochi 2014. But after I managed to replay for a bit on, well, let's just say both Rio 2016 and Sochi 2014 recently, I will say is that I usually kind of prefer Sochi 2014 a bit more than Rio 2016 was, because, well, despite with the forms of the lack of content or anything like that, and as well as from that though, the actual dream events exist on Sochi 2014 compared to the Rio 2016, or did I say 2016 and Sochi? Oh wait, it's Sochi 2014, but the forms of Rio 2016 is the fact that, well, it feels pretty much lacking with dream events, which is kind of disappointing, because expecting it back in the day in 2015, or even 16 as a result for that matter though, that we're expecting to able to actually be hyped for dream events to be returned. Like, some of these environments usually takes place in, let's just say, in Sonic 06 or something, or even especially noticeable in the forms of Sonic Lost World of all things, and even especially noticeable with Super Mario 3D World, and especially noticeable with other Sonic and Mario games here and there as well. But that's not the case, sadly, because of, you know how it is, because the Wii U selling points has actually gone pretty miserable for these points. But apart from those side of things, and also same applies for the lack of third-party support, doesn't usually sell well on the Wii U stuff, because, well, usually, for example, the terrible game in the actual Sonic community stuff on the Wii U system as a result, which is of course Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, because of the actual Sonic Boom continuity, but even then, and plus because the game itself is practically rushed and especially noticeable as like a budget Wii U title, which is pretty true because the graphics still looks terrible, even the forms of likely in, well, 5 years later at this point right now, especially because of how the fact that I was still so disappointed with that particular title when a game finally came out in 2014, and just pretty much skip over that game until 2019. I tried it and I still hate it even to this day. In this case, easily the worst video games I've ever played, so you get the idea for that point. So anyways, let's grab the garlic in case if we need to restore our health. So, aside from anything else though, there's not much else I can really speak of, although apart from the fact that, well, usually kind of speaking of such, is the fact that most reviewers seem to think about the forms of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 overall, when it comes on the Nintendo Switch, because, you know, it was now the 6th entry in the series, and the actual points they actually did point things out is that the actual story mode might be actually be drawn out a bit, although it is pretty cool in the 2D interactions, but even then though, that will point things out whenever we're able to get into the latest videos ahead. So let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet though, because, well, it's just a little bit too early to discuss at the moment. So, I mean, every once in a while though, if you can see right there on screen, is the fact that we actually come across into some sort of a similar enemies, but they behave exactly like how it did on other enemies as well, which even then, it gets a little bit more samey with the enemy types and all that stuff, but to be honest with you, I don't care about that, because I usually don't mind about this too much. So anyways, let's grab this, the golden piece of statue. I wasn't ready for that! Oh well. But hey, at least I don't lose a health every time I fell off into these obstacle stages like so, unlike in Super Mario Sunshine's difficult set of missions, which will point things out whenever we get to 2020 though, on the other hand, which it really depending on the forms of the new announcements for Mario stuff, which, as far as I'm aware, with the forms of the release games on the Mario games for this year in the Nintendo Switch hardware, well, basically though, I think they actually did release about 5 Mario games so far on the Nintendo Switch for this year, similar to the forms of 2018, which I think is actually a very good run, I will say for this matter, but God knows what we're ever going to do next in the forms of 2020 at some point. But believe me, we'll never know, and we're pretty much unknown for this point just yet though, because, obviously because of how the fact that the next Nintendo Direct little presentation, which is actually going to be focused on today, which is of course the forms of the Terry Bogard from the likes of, you know, Fatal Fury series, that the DLC character for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Then again, I'll give him a little bit of a practice a go from the likes of on my own time, and whenever I manage to play as him on my own time, then I can give my first impressions on him when me and Sylvester are trying to get back into, you know, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or Mario Kart 8 as the forms of the Wii U version, so yeah, apart from everything else though, still we need to catch up on the forms of the actual uploading schedules before, you know, 2019 is getting close towards the end, especially because now I still need to get back into Kingdom Hearts Final Mix before we jump onto the forms of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix in 2020 at some point. Well, not exactly in the early points of 2020 just yet though, but to be more accurate, later on throughout in... I can't really remember what specific day I could do that, but even then we'll have to wait and see what happens there. And also another thing is the fact that obviously Mario needs to get back into Super Mario Odyssey, and then hopefully he'll able to complete that particular Let's Play before we, you know, until next year we'll move on to the redo Let's Play of, you know, Super Mario Sunshine, and hopefully the actual quality on that game will be twice as better, so, especially with the actual commentary for the sake of being, so, but then again, that's for discussion for the later year, but even then, not now though, because, well, we're just a little bit early to be able to mention about that for this certain amount of time. But I digress. So, again, not much else to say, because even then, though, we just got, you know, almost at the halfway point of this game already, though. Despite the fact that we're on the second world in this game, well, we're on the, I would say the third level or something like that, or maybe I miscount, because I know it's been quite a few days since actually coming back into this, because I recently managed to play for a bit on, you know, just Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the sake of the actual recording setups, and especially noticeable with other games here and there as well, like, Luigi's Mansion 3, that's definitely one of them, and, I might try to get back into Link's Awakening after what I've done with Luigi's Mansion 3 first, so that way I can able to actually get myself comfortable with. I think that's the only thing I must able to do is on my own time, but whenever I get enough practice of it though, I think we might potentially try to do Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 3, I'm not 100% sure, because obviously the actual main point about the timeline is going through the first game, and then the second game, and the third game for last, because, well, I just don't know why I just didn't manage to able to actually skip over Luigi's Mansion 2, because despite with, you know, with my lack of capture card on the 3DS department, because I know it's getting pretty pricey at this point because of the actual circuit boards, as well as the actual, you know, the course and everything, so... But, you know, you get the idea for that point. So, anyways, let's go into this little bonus area right here, which basically we need to avoid a lot of electricity right there. So, however, we'll admit though right away is that if you get hit by the electricity, the actual invulnerability, or even the invincibility frames, doesn't seem to last for a long period of time though, I will admit though. But either way though, that's just besides the point. So anyways, let's go and get ourselves our next garlic, before we're able to actually just to, who knows, restore our health. Now, with these little, door faces, as you can see right there, we managed to beat the crap out of. Whenever he starts to be doing the actual beam attack, I recommend you're able to avoid that, because, well, if you're standing right close to the actual beam attack, what he's, about to do right there, well, obviously you might as well get hit most of your time, so... Because, whenever I managed the first time I played the game, though, I think this is the point I managed to go myself my first game over on my practice file, or in this case, the actual, my main file of this game, in my, memory card, to be exact. But the more I play it, I actually pretty much getting used to it at this point, so even then, yeah, that's as far as I can go for that point. So, yeah, relatively speaking, is the fact that, speaking of the forms of this game in particular, even though I could have wished if they could be able to actually let the Nintendo Switch will announce the new, Wario platformer game ever since during the forms of 2008, back in during the forms of Nintendo Wii for, you know, Wario Land Shake It, as I already mentioned about this before, ever since on Monday, to be exact. But, we're really also hoping for is the forms of Wario World, sequel. But, of course, about the fact that this is the only, 3D platformer Wario game we've only got. So, not sure why, but even then, no, let me know in the comments below if why that was a thing. But even then, no, that's besides the point. So... And once again, we come across into the enemy endurance run, as you can see right there. Yeah, with the actual beginning portion of this particular level, though we start things up with a spooky environment location. But apparently though, whenever we get to this part right there, we somehow ended up in the actual factory facility, you know, kind of section like this, which, you know, it's usually connected and all that stuff, which I always do enjoy for most of my run-throughs of that. But either way though, let's not get ahead of ourselves with the actual sightseeing or anything like that. So even then, oh yeah, every once in a while though, I don't think I've ever actually mentioned about this before actually, it's the fact that when you see these little spirals icons, as you can see right there, in order to actually progress upwards, is that you need to use the enemy to able to perform a spin attack, and then after a certain amount of few seconds, worth noting for, then you were able to actually go up. So, self-explanatory, and it's pretty simple, easier said than done scenario. So, and also we need to be very careful right there, because you really don't want to get crushed by the actual spikes, or even especially noticeable, get a touch of those spikes. So, alright, so now we come across into those little rotating blocks, as you can guys can clearly see. Yeah, eventually the actual puzzles, as I said before, like some of these bonus rooms like this, it gets progressively harder as you progress through, let's just say towards the end of the game. So even then, want to let you guys know about this again, because even then that it will start to get a little bit trickier as it goes by. So, but you know, you get the idea for that point, especially because of how the fact that we've already, you know, just managed to go started with the actual game so far. So, well, up until when we get to the point until at the very end of the game per se, but even then though, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So, but you know, you get the idea for that point. So, but I will admit though right away is the fact that, well, aside from like, you know, I already mentioned about this before about the video presentation, which is I think is already up during recently in the UK time, which is about 1 o'clock, despite the fact that this particular part of Let's Play of Wario World, if you can tell right now, is basically already uploaded during about roughly 5 o'clock or more, and then that way it'll able to actually catch me up about certain recording sessions and all that stuff. And we're probably not going to do that much too much Let's Plays at this point in time, because obviously we do need to take care of the forms of the rest of the Let's Plays first, before we do anything. So, but yeah, I might be biased, so, especially because of how the fact that, well, although there's actually the final 2 Let's Plays we're going to be doing for the end of the year, but we're not going to spoil things just yet for the very end of the year. But we do notice is that recently we decided to do a redo Let's Play of Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games on the Wii U, until when it gets to the point until almost Christmas time. So, spoiler warning, because of how the fact that that would make it happen, especially because of how the fact that that usually takes place in the Winter Olympic Games and stuff like that. Because I even remember that, even though that particular original Let's Play of that game is no longer there, but I do still remember about the fact that we discuss upon every single event has been happening in during forms of the exact same time as the actual Olympic Games, or even the actual Winter Olympics and stuff like that. So, but at this point in time, it's the fact that, well, we've already done that in Rio 2016, but hopefully during the forms of next year in 2020, we can do the same thing for Tokyo 2020 as well. So, we figure we might as well do that, because, well, we still enjoy watching those Olympic Games for sure since 2008, because I wasn't really into it back in the day, but until when Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games came around on the Nintendo Wii / Nintendo DS, then I can able to enjoy the Olympic Games even way more. So, but you know, you get the idea for that point right there, especially from my brief history about how come I usually become a huge fanatic when it comes to like Olympic Games series as of now. Or even especially noticeable what I was interested with the past few Olympic Games usually takes place in, you know, roughly in the 2000s or the 1990s and stuff like that, because there are some other video games based off from that as well. But even then, no, that's for discussion for later at the later time. But even then, again, relatively speaking, there's not much else I can usually try to, you know, talk about this at this point for this point, because, well, to be told, guys, there was not much else I can talk about. So, but I'm still a little bit not 100% complete just yet, though, for my illness is about to be recovered or anything like that. But it's just that, well, almost had myself the actual throat issues for the time because, well, I was really hoping my chili dogs were able to actually help me make me feel better, but I'm not exactly 100% sure about that. So, anyway, so just use this little turret guy, and then we can able to perform a ground slam dunk right there, and we can transport this very teeny tiny platforming sections. But these are not too bad though, until at the very end of the actual game, so... But then again, believe me, because of how the fact that the last level before the actual final 2 bosses, to be exact, will go a lot longer than the forms of how it does on those levels are. Well, for the most part though, because of how the fact that, well, obviously because, well, I'm doing one right about now, in the forms of today's video, but until the next one, I'm about to be doing the 1 level as well as the boss level, so... But until likely in World 4 that it might actually differ a bit, because of the forms of how the fact that how long the levels are going to be, even if you really want to go for 100% completion, if you really want to gather every single collectibles in this game, so... You know, it's going to be a lot of busy work and all that stuff, especially if you really want to... Well... just like the forms of how it does it on Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube, where basically, or in this case, Luigi's Mansion, the original game on the GameCube, as well as the 3DS, if you want to count that as a remake, basically, this game does manage to be able to get ourselves different endings, depends on how much collectibles you got, or even especially noticeable with the actual spirit links that you've actually got, but we'll mention more on that whenever we continue progression of this game, so... Because then again, we've only just got started with World 2, so even then though, that when we get to World 3 and World 4 essentially, well, we can able to actually discuss more on that until whenever we get to that point. So, especially noticeably how the fact that recently Piglet has managed to get started with, you know, his entire redo Let's Play of, you know, just the forms of Toy Story 2 for the PlayStation / Sega Dreamcast and all that stuff. Because, as you no doubted by now, about the fact that, well, at this point, whenever we get to likely, I would say about 18 days left until the actual 20th anniversary of the Toy Story 2 film just came out ever since in 1999. At least if you guys lived in North America, because unlike in the United Kingdom, well, it wasn't until in 2000 that we've actually got the film on the big screen, so... A little bit different, a little bit weird at the same time when it comes to films releasing on that stuff sometimes. No! Ah, there was a spirit link right there. Hold on just a moment. Let's grab this, well, you know, the final treasure that we've already got. So even then, is it possible to able to do this? Okay, the game is not going to let me do that, so... At least we're at the very end of this level though, especially noticeable towards at the actual next boss in particular. But, hopefully before we do take on the next boss, we do need to able to get ourselves a spirit link first before we're able to do anything about it, because either way though, I'm just really trying to able to desperately want to able to, you know, just gather every single items, or even just 100%ing the whole entire thing, so... But you know, you get the suggestions here, so either way, yeah, that's as far as I can say for today's video, I'm afraid, guys. Well, apart from the fact that, well, I'm so excited to see Terry in action in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and I will mention more details about everything about him, and then again, when me and Sylvester gets back onto, you know, Mario Kart 8 Let's Play, so we'll just point things out right now. Oh yeah, differently from the likes of the first world this time around is the fact that the actual requirement of the actual diamonds you need to grab, this time around though, in order to actually access to any of the bosses for that matter, is that we need to grab about 4 red diamonds, because unlike the first world, you have to acquire about 3 diamonds, and I think it goes, same applies for the future worlds and beyond. Well, basically it just adds by 1 red diamond and vice versa, so... You get the idea for that point, but before we take on the next boss, let me just go ahead and regenerate my health quickly. So I think we'll be okay with just as that. So even then, let's just go ahead and dive right in. So even then, let's take on the forms of, and I do apologize for able to accidentally skip the actual boss cutscene right there. But it looks very creepy looking, I'm going to tell you that right now. Because basically, here's the next boss in this game, which is actually known as Brawl Doll. And I think it's actually Brawl Doll, isn't it? Yeah, it's Brawl Doll. And basically in this entire boss, basically it's exactly the same, or almost identical boss fight from the likes of the first boss, or even the second boss, and even Dynamite as a matter of fact, despite with the forms of the different arena change. Basically, if you manage to able to carry yourselves the actual flame statue, or the actual flame stand, or the actual just the fire in general, you can able to actually just instantly manage to able to knock him down. And then after a few more punches though, you can either just use the slam dunk in the actual floor just like so, or alternatively you can also just manage to able to toss him out of the actual arena. But be very careful though, because sometimes he's able to catch you off guard, like his wings for instance, or even especially noticeable with the actual laser attacks. But seriously, what's the actual challenge of this? Oh, I don't know why I truly say that, mind you, but either way though, if you try to deal with him, then, you know, he'll be done for good, so. Although I will admit though, this attack can be pretty annoying to dodge sometimes, but luckily, if the actual flame sticks is already run out, well, thankfully they instantly respawn, so good thing to notice that, and let's go ahead and finish him off by simply just, well, toss him out of the arena. So there goes Brawl Doll. And I think that pretty much takes care of the forms of Horror Manor. So even then, I think it actually took me about 25 minutes, at least if you really want to go through every single collectible, which I think that could be also the same applies for the future levels up ahead. So even then, I will try to able to complete them as quick as I can. So there we go, and we managed to gather most of the gold coins, as a matter of fact, and we are done. Yeah, alright indeed, Wario, alright. And of course, since we got ourselves all the golden pieces of the actual golden statues, well, basically we got ourselves a half a heart. So, and there we go. And I think we actually got about 5.5 heart pieces and stuff like that at the moment. But even then, we'll go ahead and end things off here. So join me next time on Let's Play Wario World. It's the fact that I think we might actually wrap things up with this second world already. Seriously, I just cannot even believe we're actually breathing for this, basically. So even then, see you guys next time. Later, fellas.